All right, welcome to this episode of our show, True Data Ops. I'm your host, Kent Graziano, the Data Warrior. Each episode, we're going to bring you a podcast covering all things data ops with the people that are making data ops what it is today. If you haven't yet done so, please be sure to go look up and subscribe to the DataOps.live YouTube channel. That's where you can find all the recordings from our past episodes. So if you missed any of last season's episodes or any of the early episodes this season, that's your place to go catch up. So my guest today is a self-described data therapist. She's a founding member of the data product leadership community and a certified information privacy professional. Karen Meppen is the director of client services at Hakoda, the America's Snowflake SI Innovation Partner of the Year. Welcome to the show, Karen. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So for folks who don't know much about you, could you give us a little bit of your background in the data management space and a little bit about what you guys do over there at Hakoda?
You bet. Yes. So you mentioned a little bit about me. I'll tell you more. I have over 20 years experience working with data, and as such, I have learned a lot along the way of what it really takes to be successful when you're delivering on data solutions, the reasons why everyone comes to the table in the first place. What I've learned is that it really is a holistic experience. It's not just technology. And so as a result, I've developed experience of all the things you need in that holistic experience to be successful, which includes privacy and being aware of managing sensitive data, security, cybersecurity management, data governance, absolutely, as it relates to matching to your data goals of what you're trying to align to, and most importantly, change management. I call myself, half joking, a data therapist because it really is people that are affected by the data, be it a data engineer that wants to spend time with his or her family over the weekend and not be on call, or someone that is an analyst in the capital markets group that has a very specific way of getting the data. They know their data. It's just a matter of translating that to get insights to do his or her job or the task that they're being asked to do. And that affects, being able to go to your daughter's volleyball game, or instead of focusing on more proactive work, looking more on like fire drill type activity because of the nature of your data. So it has an impact on people and processes. And so you'll notice, and I'm sure you've seen this, Kent, as you start talking with folks, it really is more discussing how the data impacts you and more what are those pain points and how can we do better to support you in getting to those goals of what good looks like for you, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So as it relates to Hakoda, Hakoda is a nod. You may not have heard of Hakoda before. It's a reference to the Hakoda Mountains in Japan, and that's a nod to Snowflake. It's one of the snowiest places on Earth. And so what we do at Hakoda is really partner with our clients on their data innovation journey, touching on much of what I mentioned already, meeting everyone where they are, to understand what their goals are, what their challenges are, and to partner with them along the way. And so my role at Hakoda is, as within client services, is to make sure that we're partnering well each step of the way in their data innovation journey, and making sure that we're staying aligned to their strategic goals of why we came together in the first place, and making sure that we're all successful in that endeavor. So hopefully that addresses more about where we are and what we're doing.
Cool. Yeah, I didn't know that it was named after a Japanese mountain range. That makes actually for me that'll make it pronouncing it, the name of the company, easier, because I keep struggling with it with the pronunciation. As I lived in Japan for a year and actually learned to speak a little Japanese. I didn't get to see the Hakoda mountain range, but I did see Mount Fuji while I was there.
Very nice.
And actually got to go skiing one time. I lived in Western Japan, and there was actually a little ski area there that a bunch of us went to during the winter when I was there. But now that, like I said, that'll definitely make it easier for me to pronounce it now because I know it's a Japanese word.
There you go.
But I love the symbolism. I love the symbolism of choosing that for the focus, especially given obviously your focus on Snowflake and implementing solutions on Snowflake makes perfect sense now. So data products, that's really become a really hot industry buzzword. Started out in the data mesh community, and now it's pretty much everybody has adopted it. So you've been doing a lot of work with that, the one council that you're involved in. So I want to get your take on this concept of data products. What does it mean, and how important is it in dealing with the complicated data landscapes that we now have today?
Absolutely. To your point, yes, Zhamak Dehghani brought data products to the forefront with the discussion of data mesh. And within our group, you mentioned in the intro that I'm a founding member of the data product leadership community. That's something that Brian O'Neill, who's big on data product design and bringing in user experience and user interface to truly engage folks on the consumption of data products that matter and have an impact on the user experience, but also the P&L statement. And that's more where I think we get into a lot of discussions. One, because it's a buzzword, data product, I think, is thrown around a lot. And as with all the other buzzwords, it loses its meaning when it's used for everything. And so often we end up getting a little pedantic in the group about what is the data product, but I think it's more calling out, if we can't put a name on it or define it, then how can we really align on what are the best practices? How are we delivering data products? And so my own definition aligns more with much of what Gardner mentions. It is aligned to decision analytics. I also don't think that it necessarily needs to be associated with data mesh in particular. I think there are other ways to approach Data Vault, a big fan of Data Vault as a way to, you can include Data Vault and data mesh together. It's really what works best for your organization and your culture. And that's kind of coming back to that whole holistic approach of really what is going to work well for you and your organization, and also making sure that it does have standalone benefit where you can tie the value and revenue or impact if you're reducing operating costs, perhaps, that you're able to measure that as that standalone product, more so than where I think a lot of other references come into play, where it's more data as a product, like a data set, or other SaaS products that are more, they're more a whole software package. And I think there's a lot of discussion about bringing in vernacular from the software development lifecycle and blending that into data. Data is a little bit behind the curve compared to where they are with software development. So we're still evolving. And similarly, the concept of product management is fantastic, but really blending that in to say, what I've learned is there's a lot of things that work well as it relates to managing or identifying what are the insights to get to a decision in the way that a user needs to see it or interact with it. But also there are things that you just do differently that don't align so much with product management aligned to a SaaS product, let's say. And so I think that's still something that we're figuring out. And that's something more broadly within the community. And that's something that I've learned also is something that is a change of thought for the folks that we work with as well, where we think about prioritizing, it sounds cliche, start with the end in mind, but really, what is the end? Who's going to be consuming the insights that we're partnering with you to create? Why does that matter? How does that impact your operating model? Starting with that and building from there to decompose what's needed to support those strategic goals of whatever you're KPIs are, or metrics that are the decision of like what good looks like and moving the needle. And so circling back to what a data product is, I think that that's an evolving discussion from my perspective. It really is helping folks work with agility who know their data best. That's where I think the data mesh concept comes into play, to be owners of their data, and what is it that you need to work quickly to get there so that they're not lost in the concept of having to develop a new job description just to interact with their own data.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you distinguish between data as a product and data products, because I know that's been like massive amount of confusion just in the terminology people use, because we kind of got to the point where some organizations, we used to talk about, treating data as an asset. So going from data as an asset to data as a product, not as big a leap as going to data products. And like you said, dealing with product management and product management concepts. You can treat your data as a product, but that doesn't mean it's a data product, right? And I think that's
Right.
a very fine line that semantically people have a real hard time with. It's like, oh yeah, we have a data mart. That's a data product. Well, maybe yes, maybe no, depending on what you did and how you did it and who it's for, as to whether or not is that really a data product. Early in my career, I worked with the federal government for a bunch of years, developing software. And in that, I got introduced to TQM, Total Quality Management. And one of I think the most useful things I learned there was to talk about internal and external customers. And I see that really applies now in this data product, especially if you're talking about data mesh, because the one domain group, they have to think about basically the rest of the organization, potentially all these other domain groups, as being internal customers. And like you said, thinking of the end in mind, what do they really need? How do they really need to see our data? And what's going to be useful for them is going to make it easy for them to consume the data and use it for whatever analytics that they look for. And so many organizations, I think people don't get that concept.
A one-size-fits-all dashboard probably is not going to do it.
Exactly.
And I think that that's something that's a big pivot or change from, we say at Hakoda, BI before AI. Yes, you need to develop some maturity.
Mm-hmm.
However, yes, that's something that is a big part of the user experience, and that you consider the persona, and that I feel like, an analytics engineer who spends a lot of time to create a dashboard, let's say, that's functionally correct to delivering what's out there, but you see them die inside when it's presented for user acceptance testing, and that analyst immediately downloads that dashboard into Excel. And like, oh, and the point is that each persona, I'll call persona as somebody who is interacting with the data with their own unique needs, and to basically call that out, and that they may be interacting with a dashboard and looking at the data, the same set of data, but doing something very differently. So starting with that, of the intersection of the data needs with the persona and aligned to that. And to me, that's really what a data product is aligning to deliver that data and the decision, the data presented in a way to where you know what that next decision is or the next action is because of how you're presenting it. It probably isn't a dashboard. It may be something that's a push notification on your phone, or it could be something that is aligned to like a pop-up on your computer or some type of alert. I think it's not for a lack of data in our environments at this point. There's a plethora of data. It's a matter of getting through the noise to figure out what the next thing is that I need to focus on, either to react defensively or to make offensive decisions in your business of, hey, I see new value streams that we can take advantage of based upon some what we already have set up in our environment. And so I think that's also something that's lost on folks in the conversation about data products, is that, yes, and the most simple or traditional format, you can sell a data set on an exchange or a data share. Yes. But then that implies that other folks are valuing your data at what you want to sell it for. You have incredible opportunity, and not to mention, I should say, there's a lot you have to do as it relates to managing, anonymizing the data to make sure it's just you're being a custodian of personal data. To get to that level to where you can actually monetize it in a way of selling it in a market. However, what you can do to take advantage of what you have within your own organization in terms of data product to identify those offensive value streams to directly affect your KPIs internally is just incredible. And that's where, when you talk about internal customers, that's where I think it gets really exciting, where you start getting some champions to understand the direction you're going. You can really do great things.
Yeah. Now, with all of that, can you give me your perspective on, data ops and what it is and how does it fit into this evolving landscape where we're dealing with data products for different audiences coming from maybe different domain teams? What is it and where does it really fit into this?
Great question. Yes. I mean, data ops, I think, is a nod to what you hear in the software development lifecycle of DevOps, but aligned to managing with the data, right? And so, what is it that you need to do with the data so you can start exploring to create these insights that we just talked about? And so typically you're bringing in disparate data sources, be it an Excel spreadsheet from your analyst or from your ERP systems, your CRM systems, and you need to make sense of it, or even something from out in the data share, like census data or something else, right? So getting the data to a state where you can work with it is a challenge. And it's, as I call out often, it's a program, it's constant. It's not a one-time
It's not a project.
experience, right? And so the concept of bringing the data to the people who know the data best in that domain setup, be it the marketing team, the finance team, there's an incredible amount, or even the data scientists. I don't want to give them short shrift. I mean, it's known that there's so much time on a day-to-day basis, and from a data therapy experience of just the pain that folks go through to when they download their data to get it to a point where you can do something with it. And data ops is really the concept of best practices that you can put into place in your data innovation journey that we talk about often. We start in chaos, and that's really how it feels like in so many ways, but bringing order to that chaos and then looking forward more offensively, that's really what the data ops maturity experience is you can't automate either unknown processes or inefficient processes. But when you do know and know what your processes should be to address the data quality, not to be confused with just the validation of data quality assurance of going from node to node of where your data is coming in, but I mean data quality of what state does the data need to be in so that your buddy in the finance team can start exploring the data that they know already, not spend time manipulating it and focus on doing something incredible with the metrics that they already know or have stored in their Excel spreadsheets. And that's where I think it's very powerful, because once you address that and put together automation, because you have that structure set up, the data is ready to go. And so the amount of agility you have to partner with your data analyst to start getting to insights because the data is ready and has already gone through that validation point. It's just very powerful.
Yeah, and I think we had a couple of decades in the software world of agile and DevOps, where we've got a lot of maturity there, and this is kind of new in the data space. And now that we're talking about data products, like how do you version a data product, right? And how do you make sure that the data in the pipeline that we're talking about here, and that what we used to call cleansing, integrating, all of those sorts of things. How do we make sure that that keeps running properly and maintain backward compatibility and all of that? So all these concepts from software development now having to be applied to data. And I think you said early on, you said it requires a mind shift, right? You got to change the way you're thinking about things and the way you're thinking about the data, because it's not, if it's going into a data product, it's not just a data lake anymore with a bunch of data that some data scientists are going to go do analysis on. That data is feeding into a data product that might be published, might be sold on a data marketplace. And I guess that's really where kind of the product management concepts come in, along with this data ops and DevOps sorts of things. Is how do we do that efficiently? How do we make that work? So where you mentioned automation, so where do you see, what do you see as the role of automation in dealing with these types of things to make it more effective?
Absolutely. I mean, automation is something that I think a lot of folks get lost on discussion of. I'm going to talk about AI. I know I feel like everybody's talking about it here, but the concept of automation is taking things that repetitive activities and bringing that into some form of automation within your data stack. And I think what's often called out is you can't automate bad processes or unknown processes. And so I think in the maturity curve, first, you have to be at a level to where you understand what's needed to automate your data, to hit on your data quality and your versioning of all the data to know that it's good. I mean, I think that's usually the core of what happens with folks that are in those data silos we talk about all the time, is that there's just a distinct lack of trust from one group to another of the state of the data. And so there is a lot of time spent validating the data. And so really shifting that mindset, trust is hard won and easily lost. And in data, that's so true as well. And that getting everyone to a level of trust through this automation, partnering with them along the way to give their input of what does need to be included in the data to have a source of truth that everybody can rely upon is huge. And so I'm a big fan of keeping it simple. And so that's where the automation of all the checkpoints as it relates to your master data. I'm going to dork out on on data governance topics here, but making sure that the freshness component of it, the accuracy, I think something that folks have stumbled upon, data anomaly detection, meaning that it may meet your data quality standards, but it's not necessarily expected in the range of the data for an example of particular numbers that you're looking for a customer for the month or something like that. That's huge. And so the automation of that is incredible, so that if you already know what's going on, put that into effect so that whomever's in that domain doesn't need to have technical awareness of all the challenges that usually your data engineer has to go through, or your data scientists as well, to just munge the data to make sure it's clean and in a good state. I'm a big fan of DataOps because it just really does keep it simple, that you can interact, create those standards, where something that I've often seen with my clients is that the IT team opens up access to all the data. Great. And then the blowback or the consequence of that is then that everybody starts creating their fiefdoms in their particular domains. And then there's just no awareness of access to the particular data sets to unwind particular queries. There's no consistency. People start talking about a data marketplace. It's kind of like getting your metrics into that library or data store. Like, there's more siloing really from your
Potentially,
from
yeah.
finance to marketing, et cetera. And then the tech team is starting to get a huge backlog of all the different folks in each of the fiefdoms to ask about, well, what is this data, or how do I know it's, how fresh it is, or if this is the most current? I don't know. And so the effect of automation is that it allows you to manage visibility of your access, manage what I'll call reference or standard like architecture, so that you can logically build on what the tech team can manage. It reduces your pain along the way of all the time it takes to work through your tech support request, and it allows really those domain folks in those fiefdoms to do what they know to do best, while the tech team can also have confidence that you're maintaining that governance and consistency of your data. So really, it makes everyone happy along the way because you have those standards in place, and you don't need to get in line to get support each time you see a problem, which is usually why silos are created in the first place, because nobody does want to get in line and ask for help from the tech team.
Right. Yeah, and then what you're talking about really plays into the concepts of monitoring and observability, along with all the automation. If we can automate all that so that we can have proactive alerts, like
Yes.
I like the idea, something values that are out of this normal range, because if you're expecting sales to be, between 0 and $100,000, and something comes in at 5 million and you don't catch it, it could grossly skew your forecast, right? Because that number was wrong and it really wasn't what was happening. And so having that kind of monitoring going on there, and it's a form of data governance. You mentioned governance, and making sure that that we're feeding the right data into the data products, but also making sure that people can't see data they shouldn't see. And it is up to those domain teams to provide some of that governance, is who really has access to these sorts of things. And as much as we can automate it, that's what's going to allow us to scale, right? Otherwise we're going to get the bottlenecks you're talking about, is we're trying to eliminate these bottlenecks so that we can really get to scale with all of these activities that we're doing with the data.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, and that's the entire point, right? Is that you do get folks to opt in, and that's tough. And I think the hardest part is the people part, right? It doesn't work unless everybody opts in to really trusting that centralized source of truth. And that, why does somebody need to change? I think there's something everyone's experience, which is change fatigue, for all these data transformations of good intentions, but really that for many reasons that they're not able to come to fruition. And there's a lot of statistics about how many digital transformations fail. And I think the whole point is that it is that holistic process where you do need people, processes, and the technology is really just a lever of that holistic experience to deliver on whatever problems you're trying to solve, or offensively even trying to pursue future opportunities to support your organization.
Yeah, exactly. So since you're a data therapist, the second to last question I'm going to ask you is, if you could tell an organization one thing, what would you tell them so that they can start delivering value from their data in the near term? What do they really need to focus on to get going?
Uh, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it really is the focus on the people and the user experience. That is really the key to being successful, engaging and being a good partner with the business. And the business is made of people, marketing, finance, accounting team. And really being a good partner in the organization is what will lead to your success.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, great advice. I mean, we always get the people, processes, technology conversation, and like you say, people are first. You got to solve the people problem because it doesn't matter how much technology you throw at it. If you haven't solved that problem, it doesn't matter. It's not going to work out.
Exactly.
All right. So, what's next for you and Hakoda? Any conferences or meetups or things coming up in the next couple of months where you guys are going to be?
Absolutely. So you may have noticed in the news, there is the Snowflake Data Cloud World Tour. Hakoda is active in a lot of cities globally. I believe the next one is going to be in DC next week. And we look forward to seeing any folks if they're going to be in town in DC at that Data Cloud World Tour.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we're out of time. At 30 minutes went really fast. You and I could probably talk about this, all of these things for another hour at least. But unfortunately, we got to go. So thank you for being my guest today, Karen.
Thank
Really
you so
enjoyed
much.
it. Thanks everybody out there for joining in and watching us live, or maybe watching this on a replay. Be sure to join me again in 2 weeks. My guest is going to be my friend, the award-winning podcaster Cindy Howson. I know her as the creator of the BI scorecard, and now she serves as the chief data strategy officer at ThoughtSpot. So that should be another very exciting conversation with Cindy in 2 weeks. And as always, be sure to like the replays from today's show, tell your friends about the True Data Ops podcast, and send them a link to the show. So until next time, this is Kent Graziano, the Data Warrior, signing off.